in the sense that they were exploited, that a tiny minority at the top of society dictated what happened in Russian society, and workers had no power. And so I look at Maoism as really an extension, an even more intense extension of the worst of Stalinism, in the sense that the glorification of the party leadership as a cult with all the answers. This has absolutely nothing to do with socialist tradition. Marx did not promote the RCP, but actually promote a cult of personality. They think it's a good thing to promote leadership that has all the answers that you don't question. Stalinism encouraged the idea that to criticize Stalin and the party was heresy, that you were a counter-revolutionary. This is why Trotsky was murdered. This is why the whole opposition inside Russia had to be destroyed. So really there was nothing about Russian society, into the late 20s that was socialist. So for 50, 60, 70 years, communism or Stalinism dominated the left. So it meant that many people who kind of gravitated towards revolutionary ideas looked at Stalinist Russia and thought, well, that seems to be socialism. So a lot of the anti-colonial rebellions in the Second World War, you had like minority regimes that led revolts to get rid of Britain, France, and then they established socialist societies. But workers didn't take power in any of those societies. There was no workers' councils. Workers were not occupying their workplaces. This was not the working class in revolt making its own revolution in order to transform itself and hold power and make democratic decisions. And China was a similar model to that, in the sense that workers in China, they may have supported the revolt, but it was not a democratic workers' revolution from below. So I think that the legacy of Stalinism and Maoism has actually been very damaging to the international Marxist movement. It's actually held back our movement for generations. And I think now we have a massive opportunity to actually go out and talk about what real socialism is. Workers' power from below, liberating society, not a bureaucracy at the top of society, that we actually want workers' councils that are democratic and have many parties that debate out what is the best way to organise our society, what do we need to put our resources to first. Building more transport, all of it. I mean, we want all of it. We want parks, we want new transportation systems, etc., etc. So I think we want to build a new movement that rejects everything about Stalinism as the opposite. And when I say Stalinism, I include Maoism because I think it's part of the same anti-working class political tradition. It's given the whole idea of a revolutionary party a bad idea because the party dictates and tells the movement what to do, rather than revolutionaries being part of the movement, learning from your brothers and sisters who are also part of the struggle, but also then trying to utilise the history and the experience of the working class movement, and also making the argument that we have to get rid of capitalism to solve our problems, and that the working class has the power to do that. But then we do not have all the answers. The ISO does not have all the answers. We've got a bunch of good ideas. But if I hear a good idea at a meeting, I'm not just going to say, well, we're from the vanguard, therefore our ideas must be right. And so if you guys don't agree, we're leaving, or you will be leaving us and we will still be the vanguard. We will be by ourselves. And so I think that it's actually an obstacle to building a democratic movement from below. And it's the wrong. Marx always argued socialists don't build their own movements. They are part of the working class struggles. And to be relevant today, we have to be part of the Occupy movement, we have to be part of defending libraries, to stop these post offices being closed, with everybody and anybody who wants to fight that. And that if you want to make socialism relevant, you have to make socialism relevant to those actual struggles. And that's how you win leadership in struggles, and you win over people who are part of those struggles. If you have good ideas, if you don't have good ideas, why would anybody join you? I mean, it's true. Join something else. If we don't have good ideas for these struggles, we're not going to be able to kind of build a much bigger revolutionary socialist organisation. I think we do have very good ideas that can help the movement move forward. I think some of them were discussed today. Lumpen proletariat, I think that it's sometimes very much misinterpreted. Look, the Attica Rebellion is our brothers and sisters in prison rising up against racism and the criminal justice system. It's the 40th anniversary We can't just think that like people who are downtrodden in prison are our class enemies. I mean, Marx talked about an industrial reserve army. Capitalism needs 5% of the population at most times unemployed in order to frighten workers who have jobs into not striking. If there's full employment, right, there's nobody to replace me, there's no scabs, we're going to go on strike. And we're going to keep going on strike until we take over everything. So you actually have a whole section, you need a section of the population that's not working, that then capitalism can then scapegoat as lazy and do nothings. Why don't you get a job? It's much harder when the system actually puts millions and millions of people out of work, and it's clear people are desperate for work and can't get jobs. Then it's clear that it's the 1% that's actually created that problem. So, I mean, I think it's like, look, you know, again, like death row, prisoners on death row organise themselves to fight for their own freedom and prove their innocence. You know, there's 1 million black people in prison. I think that they're our brothers and sisters, and we have to fight for their liberation. And we want the prisons abolished, and we want people freed, and we want to have a society where, you know, this is not where nobody's forced to, you know, where racism and mass incarceration don't actually exist. Now, I'm more frightened of businessmen, traders, who are bankrupted, right? And blame the working class and align themselves with the police and will go out and try to kill us because they see our movement as the reasons for you know, their decline, or sections of the petty bourgeoisie. I mean, if you think about small business people, they hate the corporations, they hate Walmart because they're putting us out of business, but they also hate us because we're trying to organise a union in their workplace. So there's lots of groups of people. You know, and in the prison population as well, there's a sizable Nazi wing of it. I mean, but that's also encouraged by the prison system because it segregates the prisoners. A lot of white prisoners go into prison and they do not want to join the racist gangs, but they're forced to. So I think that it's a much more, yes, there will be people that the system finds to try and divide us, to try and use those people, you know, petty criminals, people who are like racists, who will never have, can't be won to another set of ideas. So I think we have to be careful about how we use, how we describe the lumpen proletariat. I think what comrades have said about Egypt, in Egypt, it's a democratic revolution. The vast majority of society wants a democracy. It was not just the workers, the lawyers played a vanguard role in that struggle, many sections. But I think it's a democratic revolution, but who will see the democratic revolution through to the end? I think that the working class has an interest in seeing that revolution right through to the end, and that seeing it through to the end is not just about winning the right to have a vote to decide who's the president and what political parties, but it's a right to control the wealth over society, and that's a struggle that the democratic revolution can actually transform itself into a social revolution that turns society ultimately upside down. Now, why did the military tell Mubarak to go? Because when they seen workers on the move, they said, if you stay in office, these workers are going to start, they're going to be on strike, they're going to shut down workplaces. What's going to happen? They're going to set up new committees. They're not just going to talk about getting rid of Mubarak, they're going to talk about getting rid of the regime. The army might split because it's a conscript army. If we ask the army to shoot the protesters, the army might turn their guns on the generals, which has happened in the United States as well, in Vietnam, and we had the beginnings of a kind of anti-army brass, pro-working class movement in Iraq and in Vietnam. So I think, again, those are, you know, the working class plays the hegemonic role, but we want to liberate all society, and we can bring people along with us. The police, I mean, look, in Wisconsin, there was police officers running around with police for labour signs. Extremely confusing. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I grew up in Northern Ireland, and I can tell you that I had never been in a restaurant with a police officer. I had never been in a situation with police officers unless they were in armoured vehicles with guns and unless they were questioning people. So I grew up in a society where the police were the enemy because they were the enemy. If they come into your neighbourhood, it was an invading army. That's how it feels if you're black, I think, in the United States. Or if you're Latino, these people are saturating our neighbourhoods and they victimise us, they brutalise us. But what's happening in Northern Ireland right now is that, the IRA decided, the Irish Republican Army decided on a peace process, and they are now, the police was 99% Protestant, right? Now the former IRA members are encouraging Catholics to join the police. So there's more Catholics joining the police. But it doesn't change the character of the police. What are the police there for? They're to protect the Northern Irish capitalism, which has become more neoliberal, where the gap between rich and poor has gotten wider. So you will have Catholic police officers brutalising working class Catholics and working class Protestants. It's not a matter of these Catholics being good or bad people. It's more the role that they are encouraged to play and are indoctrinated to play in society. There has never been a social movement anywhere in the world, in my memory, or that I know about, that has not been confronted by the state in the form of the police and then the courts. So it's about a system of repression that the state, that the ruling class uses. They get a section of people who are not part of the police, are not owners of means of production, but they are indoctrinated to believe that the vast majority of the population are potential criminals, and that any challenge to law and order means chaos, anarchy, and that their role is to stop that. Individual police officers will make a decision. Some of them will leave the force. Police, if you've seen when the revolutions in that overthrew Stalinism, I mean, it was literally the police forces and in Egypt that hung on right until the end to try and defend the regime. When the mass of the population, now, I'm not a police officer, I don't know what goes on through people's heads. Do they not see what's going on around them? But it's also their paycheck depends on defending the regime. So they will lose their jobs if the regimes or an economic system that's dominated by the 1% is overthrown. They're out of a job. They don't see it as a way to liberate themselves. They see it as the opposite. And then just to wrap up, because it's time to wrap up, I feel, like Fidel. Sorry, not too long. But the question of if somebody says, we're occupying all of the United States, I am so proud to be an American. I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually think that, if people are proud because Americans are rising up and resisting and actually saying, we're going to try and overthrow the 1% and make our country a much better place, I think that this is a really, really good start. Now, I think that our job as socialists is to actually go out and campaign against the idea that Americans or America is any better than any other country around the world, and that our country has absolutely no right to dictate to Palestine, to Iraq, or invade countries and take them over because we're a superior race. I think we have to campaign against that. I think that people who are saying, I want to challenge a government who's waging wars around the world and this makes me a proud American, is not a bad place to start with. But I think you can go from there and actually say, we want to win people to the idea that you're part of a global working class. That we're not just, and that even in the United States, what does the American working class look like? Well, it's got 35 million workers, 11 million of them undocumented, who are part of the American working class. So what does the American working class look like? It actually looks like the global working class, and that is our class. And I think we have to win people to we are not just fighting here in the United States for fundamental social change. We are fighting because we've got a world to win, and we've absolutely nothing to lose but our chains.